It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Hello and welcome to Countywide. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Jen Cohen. Today we're talking about Sedona In Motion. We have with us our guests, our city manager, Justin Clifton, and Andy Dickey, who is the Director of Public Works and City Engineering for the City of Sedona. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Neat. Sedona In Motion. It's amazing you had to name it.
Yeah, we kind of like the brand. You know, Sedona In Motion really conveys what we're trying to do, which is get people moving, and not just in vehicles, but sidewalks, on transit, using bike lanes. It could be recreational, it could be commuter focused. So more broadly, it's not just traffic. It's really about getting people from point A to point B.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was impressed that it included bicycling, walking, public transit, and we're talking residents here as well as some tourist stuff. But primarily the focus is on residents, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's probably split, frankly. In our peak season, when we get a lot of tourists, it's really important to give them options. You know, the way Sedona's laid out, it supports driving everywhere, and we'd like to change that slowly but surely and give people options. For tourists, if they could get on a bus and get to their trailhead and get to the restaurant, maybe get back to the hotel, park once kind of thing, that would be a big benefit also to residents, because it would keep some of the tourists off the road and ease up the congestion a little bit.
That is true. That is true. Now, how did you come about with all of this, Andy? I know there's a lot of things involved being in engineering, with working with traffic and transit. How did you guys come up with this plan, the Transportation Master Plan?
Well, we first went back to our long list of other studies that we've conducted in the past and reviewed that past information and hired a consultant. We brought them in and they worked with us reviewing that past information and looking at the issues that we have today. We did a lot of surveys and studies and things to gather information, and then developed a strategy, or actually I should say 12 strategies, on how we could tackle the issues that we discovered. And now we're working on projects that are part of those strategies. So that's all part of what's going on with the overall SIM program.
Yeah, that's something. So the Transportation Master Plan was completed in January. I believe that's great. And now you're in the implementation phase.
Right, right. Wow. And making some progress. I don't know if it's enough. You know, in the eyes of ordinary citizens, you know, this should happen pretty quickly. They should be seeing shovels and dirt, but it's a little more complicated than that. So we're glad to be done with the study phase, but now as we roll out implementation, it's going to take, you know, a number of months, or in some cases a number of years, to really get projects started, completed, and to really see SIM come to life.
Right, right. And we'll get into some of the projects in a little bit. If you want to check out the website, sedonaaz.gov/SIM, Sedona In Motion. Check that out. Great information on that website for that. Now, in the process of coming up with this plan, you did extensive public research as well. You had public input, you held meetings and open houses and did surveys and had discussions, and that had to be pretty wild.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to engage people in something like this. We used a couple creative tools. Some of our survey instruments were different than the traditional survey. Instead of just asking, what do you think, we laid out pretty broad scenarios. So in the beginning, we were asking people the difference between kind of a nuisance and a real problem. You know, is that 30-minute trip, is that a 45-minute trip, et cetera. But as we started to develop projects, we were able to say, okay, here's an idea. It could reduce the congestion of that trip from something like 30 minutes to 15. Here's the cost. Here's all the other trade-offs, including maybe loss of landscaping or narrowing of street lanes or whatever might be required to get that project done, and then solicit from people, do you like it? And would you be willing to pay? So it was pretty dynamic the way that people were able to engage. We did that in-house live, so we had some open house sessions where people could walk around the room and give that kind of input, and an online survey tool that generated thousands of responses, which is pretty impressive given our population.
Right, that's brilliant. Justin, what a brilliant idea to do that, to give them scenarios instead of just what's wrong, and then they
Right, right, and it helped us prioritize. In fact, there were a number of strategies that were off the table because the trade-offs were too significant, or the cost was too great, or the benefit was too little. So it was really helpful in going from a very broad scope of ideas to things that we could really take action on.
Okay. Now, Sedona In Motion is the name for this very large project that you're implementing now. What would you say, if you were to describe Sedona In Motion, like you're saying, it is this, please explain that for us, Justin.
Yeah, it's really multimodal. So some of it is relieving congestion in the hotspots, namely coming down 89A through the canyon or coming up to Sedona from State Route 179. Those are busy streets. In the peak seasons, we experience a lot of congestion. We want to relieve some of that. But it's more broadly about getting people around, getting people in motion. That could be walking, that could be biking. So Sedona streets aren't very well connected. People that have traveled the neighborhoods know that you might go down a road expecting that you could turn left or turn right and get to the next block over, and you can't. So in some places it means making a connection that doesn't exist. A lot of our tourists that travel out to popular trail destinations like out Dry Creek Road, maybe they're going to bike, but they want to drive to the trailhead because they don't feel safe biking on the road. So if we can provide them a shoulder or a multi-use path or something like that, again, we get a few of those cars off the road and get people to their destination another way. So it's broadly about getting people around, and it's not just for today, but long-term into the future. We're really mindful that the Red Rocks are going to be here for presumably forever, and Sedona will always be a popular tourist destination and a great place to live and work. So while we have certain problems today that we'd like to solve, we'd like to position ourselves better for tomorrow's problems as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, from an engineering standpoint, Andy, how is the city of Sedona for ease of doing all these projects? Everything, of course, is made out of rock, and everything's congested, and there's not that we have a huge population in Sedona, but it's a small little place with a decent amount of people in it. What does that look like for you, having to put these into place?
Well, it's a matter of juggling our resources, really. We've got our project managers on staff that have to take on these projects and develop them from start to finish. So it's a matter of how do we fit this many projects into our busy work schedules, and so it takes a lot of planning to make sure that we're on track and moving forward with. We have about 10 projects underway right now, which are part of the SIM program.
Underway right now?
Yes.
What are a few of those?
We've got transit studies that they're beginning right now. We've got one of our major roadway projects in Uptown is under design, or beginning. It's in the process of design right now. We've got a couple of our major roadway connections. Justin was kind of talking about a little bit. A couple of those projects going on. We've got bike and pedestrian pathways that we're designing. We're looking at one of the hot spots that we talk about is the Y roundabout, for instance. That's one of our sources of congestion. So we're working with ADOT right now on obtaining funding that's been secured and moving forward with planning for a study for that area and eventually a project there. Wow. We're also looking at the crosswalk at just adjacent to Portal Lane on SR 179. We're looking at, we're working with a consultant to develop a contract to look at that issue right now. And the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Andy and his team are very busy.
Yeah. I bet. You must have a large team.
The overall Public Works department is it's just over 30 employees.
Wow, that's much smaller than I would have expected to tackle all those projects.
Well, and honestly, a big part of that's maintenance, and our project management staff, we only have, there's 4 or 5 project managers on staff.
Great. Well, we're going to take a quick break and come back and dig into a little bit more about where the shovels are starting right now. If you want to check out the website, check out sedonaaz.gov/SIM. We're talking with City Manager Justin Clifton and Andy Dickey, who's the Director of Public Works and City Engineering. Don't go away because we'll be right back.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool. Oh, yeah. Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
only you can prevent wildfires.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Back to Countywide. We're talking about Sedona in Motion on this show. We have with us City Manager Justin Clifton, and we have the Director of Public Works and City Engineering for the City of Sedona, Andy Dickey. Gentlemen, all right, so we've got the what the Sedona is, Sedona in Motion is out of the way. Let's dig into some projects. Specifically, the hottest one, I have to say, Justin, is probably going to be the Roundabout Y at 179, where it meets 89A between Uptown and West Sedona. Because I look at that and think there's nothing you can do there. Right. It is what it is. So what did you come up with, and how did you come up with it?
Well, to some extent, you're right. And inheriting a road system like we did, where you have the convergence of two state highways, that really is the hotspot. I mean, the Y is where almost everything happens and where a lot of the congestion in any direction starts. So ultimately, what we have in mind is to add a couple of what we'll call slip lanes. So imagine that you're going northbound on 89A, headed to Uptown, but you want to turn right onto 179. Right now, you go into the roundabout. What we'd like to do is add a lane to the outside of that roundabout, separated by a curb, so those vehicles can basically get into a dedicated turn lane, bypass the roundabout altogether. We'd like to do the same thing for traffic headed north on 179 and trying to turn right into Uptown. That's even more important, because if you think about what happens as you approach that roundabout, you're waiting. You're yielding to everybody that's already in the roundabout. And if you're not a little more of an assertive driver, you might be waiting a long time. So now you have a dedicated right-hand turn lane that you can get into, and ultimately you'll have to merge back into that traffic. But a merge is much preferred to a full stop, especially a long stop where you're sitting and waiting. So those two added lanes should provide a lot of relief. You not only get a few people to where they're going without entering the roundabout, but that also means you've reduced traffic in the roundabout. So all the other background traffic has fewer vehicles to compete with.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Let's hope it works. It certainly should.
Wow, oh my gosh. Now in Uptown, what are you guys going to be doing in Uptown?
The Uptown Roadway Improvements Project is what we call that one. It's got a few main elements. One of the main things we're looking to do is add a second southbound lane. That's utilizing existing roadway width, which includes a two-way left turn lane. We would also install a median throughout Uptown that would restrict left turns and kind of funnel the pedestrian activity to the crosswalks. A couple of the things that are causing congestion in Uptown are the left turn conflicts, as well as pedestrian movement across the corridor, which is not controlled. So we're trying to control that as best we can. A couple other features of this project include roundabouts. Once we put in the medians, we need to give folks a place to turn around. So we're looking at a roundabout at the south end of the corridor, either at Jordan Road or at Forest. We're studying which location is best for that. And then we're looking at the north end of Uptown as well. We at that location, we would either have a roundabout or what we would call a turnaround, which is kind of a half roundabout, you might say. the main point of those features is to allow folks to be able to turn around. The next thing would be a lane connection between southbound 89A at the north end of Uptown that would connect to Schnebly Road. That's where our public parking lot is located, and that's free parking. You may know that we now have paid parking along the frontage of 89A in Uptown. So we're trying to get folks that are actually have a destination of Uptown and headed southbound, get them out of the road so that they're not mixed with that congestion once they pass through Uptown, and get them to the parking lot more efficiently. So those are the main elements of that project.
Sounds relatively involved.
It will be.
How long do you expect that to take, Andy?
We're looking at, we haven't nailed down the exact construction time frame yet. That's something that we still need to go through, but you know, it would be somewhere around 5 to 6 months. I'm
Wow.
just projecting that it would be somewhere in that range.
Geez, even if it takes double that, that's nothing. I mean, for the amount of reconstruction you're doing on the way things move up there.
Well, just to clarify, you know, we're not reconstructing the roadbed itself. We would be installing the median, you know, so that would be taking out asphalt. But beyond the median, we wouldn't be reconstructing the road.
Working with what you have already in place. Brilliant.
Yeah, and that's really an overarching theme of what we're trying to do. There's kind of two broad philosophies with traffic and traffic improvements. One is adding capacity, and the other they sometimes call demand management. That means you're trying to get people from point A to point B differently. And we have a blend. So we have a handful of real bottlenecks. You might think of them as kinks in the hose, right? So in Uptown, Andy mentioned the friction that occurs with all these pedestrians and cars waiting to turn or waiting to park. You have places like the roundabout that are just congested. So we'd like to address that by adding a little bit of capacity. But really the rest of the strategies are meant to give people alternatives. Hopefully they don't get in their car. The tourist, visitor comes to a hotel, parks, gets on a bus, gets on a bike, or walks. Same thing with locals. If you're making a short trip across town, there's more than one way to get there, so you don't have to take your car.
Nice. Now you're doing, transit is another big part of the project, Justin, is that correct?
Yes, yes. I think transit really has a lot of potential. We've studied a couple small towns. One of them is Breckenridge, Colorado, a little ski town, not unlike Sedona, small population, a large visitor base, a little bit spread out. They had 4 million riders on their transit system last year, so it can be done. Now we have some challenges. You know, there's a lot of public land destinations, so we're working with the Forest Service. There's state highways, so we're working with our state DOT, and then there's local concerns as well. You know, do we pick up at hotels? Do we pick up on the side of the road? Is there a shady place to sit and wait? There are lots of issues, and that's what our implementation plan is really about, is determining how can we make that whole system work. Maybe even something as ambitious as a park and ride. Let's say you came up from Phoenix and you're headed to Slide Rock, popular destination. Could you stop at somewhere like the Forest Ranger Station or somewhere else near the village of Oak Creek, park, get in a shuttle, bring your cooler and all your toys and fun things, and get a free trip up to Slide Rock and back, and take a shuttle full of 20, 30 people instead of individual cars? That has a lot of potential, but some challenges that we'd have to address along the way.
Well, certainly. It sounds amazing. That absolutely sounds like an amazing idea. Okay, check out the website, sedonaaz.gov/SIM. We're talking about Sedona in Motion. We have with us City Manager Justin Clifton and Andy Dickey, the Director of Public Works and City Engineering for the City of Sedona. A little bit more countywide coming back, so don't go away because we'll be right back.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley in Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
what to expect when you're expecting.
Like here?
A teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to teen-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. Preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
Ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary. Hi, Smokey. Only you can prevent wildfires.
And welcome back to Countywide. Just a few seconds left. We're talking about Sedona in Motion. Check out sedonaaz.gov/SIM. Okay, City Manager Justin Clifton. How did you know all of this stuff was going to work? How did you look at that and find that out?
Our study was really creative. We did things like pulled cell phone ping data to determine where people were coming from and where they were going. We used really sophisticated models so that we could take a fixed trip, like from the village to Sedona, and map out its current condition and then project what would happen if we implemented certain improvements. So a lot of new technology and things were used to give us a pretty high level of confidence that the projects will function the way we think they're going to function.
Wow. All right, now projects, money's got to come from somewhere. So here's the big question. Everybody wants to know who's paying for it, where's the money coming from?
Yeah, a big part of the projects are funded by a new half-cent sales tax that was implemented in the last year. The good news about that is that's majority paid by visitors. So probably 60–70%. Sedona is one of those communities that doesn't tax groceries, so a lot of that tax is coming from retail establishments, restaurants, hotels, etc. So we've leveraged some of those new dollars coming in from that tax with grant opportunities. We've already received almost $1.5 million of grants for projects or studies happening right now. And then we're really proud that over the last 3 or 4 years, we've accumulated a healthy reserve balance in our capital fund that was intentional to save some money that we're not spending on normal day-to-day operations. And almost $10 million of the project total, that might be 35 over 10 years, came from those dollars that we weren't otherwise spending on operations, saving for this purpose. So we kind of blended a few sources. That new tax money, some saved dollars, and whatever grants we can get our hands on to make this as palatable as possible for the local residents.
Wow, well that's great. And to clarify that it is a sales tax. So if I go out, almost like a luxury, if I go out to eat or I go shopping or do something, I'm paying a little bit of it then. But in general, I'm not. But the tourists are.
Right. I mean, if you even think about the local restaurant, you might go sit down, and if it's, say, spring break, you'll probably look around and notice that everybody seems like they're from out of town. So the good news is a lot of the impact comes from visitation, and we know that. So finding a source of funds that's tied to that visitation was important. The sales tax really fits because, again, we estimate 60–70% of the total sales tax is paid by visitors. That even gets applied to hotel rooms. The hotels collect a separate bed tax, but they also pay the sales tax. So really a lot of revenue coming in from the visitation, helping to mitigate some of the impact that comes with visitation and having such a strong tourist economy.
Excellent. Just the way it should be. Absolutely. Tourists can pay for it.
Well, we think it is appropriate, really. And there is a little bit of sharing. You know, that robust tourist economy is one of the reasons we've never needed a property tax. So residents can feel good that when they see some of that traffic on the road, they also know that some of those cash registers are collecting a little bit of money that are going to help fix the streets also.
Yep. So when you look down the road in Sedona and you see traffic, see dollar signs. Let's shift perspective. Well, that's all the time we have for Countywide. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Check out Sedona in Motion on the website, sedonaaz.gov/SIM. Thank you. We'll see you again next time.